Hello YouTube, One Nation Under Canada again. I'm sorry I made the last video too long, and because it's like a really complicated issue, and I can't put it in 15 minutes. I'm sure other people can, but I babble a lot. But uh, basically, though, in a nutshell, what I'm saying is that um, the transition can't be made by just any type of. I don't think not like you can't make a transition into the system like that, like you could, let's say, Obamacare, where you write a system of laws and regulations and then you describe which organization and this is what they do and all that. I don't think you can make a system like that just like that. Um, I think that the one of the biggest foundation to making the system work is to have uh, a culture of people where at least the majority, and I mean, when I say majority, I mean more than just 51%, who um, who are capable of logical uh, thinking. And right now, you don't have that, and because people are I don't not when I say not educated, I don't mean that in an academic sense, but generally speaking, most people do not have the means to even be well informed or have proper discretion and understanding what are the facts and what is the nature of the universe regarding our place in it and how our society actually works. And I don't mean to just overgeneralize it, but when you think of politics and all that, when a politician says something that's not correct, um, the people who went in there supporting that person don't admit that, oh wait, he said something wrong. They pledged unquestionable loyalty to that political candidate, and they don't budge no matter what. And because they take pride in their tradition or in their political group, and that's how our society operates. It doesn't matter where you go, if it's a democracy, a dictatorship, or any other type of government. And our society is in a we're transitioning right now. I think what happens is once this internet start people start communicating, they have the means now to bring about social change much more effectively than they did 100 years ago. Because if you ever look into history, one of the biggest things that caused democracy to even come into existence, maybe not directly, but is uh, the invention of the printing press. Because during the Protestant Reformation, um, you know, the way their movement started was they had the means, this new type of technology that gave them the means to produce information and hand it out and give people all this knowledge without physically standing in front of them and speaking to them. And that's what the internet is. The internet is a proverbial printing press, and it's much more effective than a printing press. And when people can share information, they come together, they have a common bond. And I think that hundreds of years into the future, it's easy to underestimate the power of the internet culture, because the internet hasn't been an everyday thing for most people before 1990. I would probably say 1998, 99, because most people did not have the internet in the 90s. And um, in the future, everyone's going to have it, and they're going to have access to it, and you're going to have a different culture, a culture um, that's not geographically restricted in their worldviews and their information. So a person living in a third world country, or I wouldn't say third world, it might not be a third world country then, but a person living in Antarctica is going to have the same access to the same amount of information as a person who's living in Manhattan or New York City. And uh, I think that once you get all this information in here, all these types of worldviews that we have today regarding politics uh, become more easily debated. Whereas in the past, if you wanted to debate someone, you physically stood in front of them, and if you got in an argument with that person, there might be a conflict. There could be a fight out in the streets. There could be an insurrection or some kind of violence take place. You could get killed. People might recognize you, discriminate against you, and these types of things would discourage people from standing up and trying to create a social movement of any type. And the internet does away with most of those types of inhibitions that are caused by that type of culture. And once you have this culture, this internet culture that remains in place for hundreds of years, you have a more literate type of culture. And because what happens is the ideas get challenged, whereas uh, in ancient times, or even to this day, if you have a flawed worldview and you go out in the street and try to convince a bunch of people, those people might just assume that your worldview is correct because everyone else around them believes in it. Whereas on the internet, you got people from everywhere. So if you got a bunch of ignorant people in one geographical area that believe in a flawed ideology, then someone could come on that internet from another area who's not necessarily indoctrinated by that culture and say, hey, well, these are my criticisms and I want you to address them. And you can see that on YouTube with religion and politics. And, you just Google um, any type of thing would do with religion, and there's going to be criticisms, or even with political ideologies, communist and capitalist, they debate on YouTube. And what this is, the internet is like a filtering process where only the most efficient and logical ideologies and worldviews become the dominant worldview. It may take some time for a flawed worldview or a worldview that's becoming obsolete for it to completely die out. But eventually, the people that make the best arguments, that provide the best answers, will eventually become more uh, influential than the person who just clings to whatever ideology that their culture, their geographical culture, created and kept in place simply by the fact that they kept all the information outside from coming in. Like for instance, North Korea. Like North Korea, uh, Kim Jong Il didn't allow the internet. He had what you call the intranet, which was just a network that were all servers in North Korea, and people, when they went on the internet, it was just information that he provided. And that the internet's doing away with that. And I think the transition, though, it's not going to be it's not going to be pretty. I'm sure that there's going to be conflict because you're going to have a lot of people that are going to feel alienated when it gets to the point where the money system is no longer sustainable because the technology outsourced the blue collar worker. You're going to have some ticked off people, and some people are going to get left out. Some people might get killed in a conflict, and it's not going to be between America and the world, or the Western world versus another Eastern world or what have you. It's going to be I think it's going to be a lot different, but it's going to be a matter of people that a large number of people are going to say, you know what, we need to have a resource based economy. But I think that the way the transition will occur, it won't go right into a resource based economy. They might actually revert from they might actually de-evolve from a democracy into a techocracy, where you're going to have a technocrat, a person who's an expert in whatever technological or career field people just want to put in charge of the of that system because they don't want democracy. They don't people realize that, not everyone can decide and vote for who's in charge of a certain field or field of the economy, um, because most people aren't well educated in that field, and they don't know what is good for that field. Like, for instance, we don't elect who's in charge of the Federal Reserve, but our elected officials do. But the reason why we don't elect our own bankers is because people generally um, are not educated, and including me, don't have the means to even be make a good decision on decide who should be in charge. And I think that when this transition is occurring, you're going to have a lot of people living in poverty real quick. They're going to be remembering from just a few years before where people were living half decent, but it was so unstable, and um, they're going to be willing to give up possibly their democratic rights and what have you, just for uh, a government promise to help them, to give them some kind of security. Maybe the government might provide housing. They might tax the corporations that own the technology that outsources the blue collar worker and subsidize these people's houses. But um, the necessity for a resource based economy will be there, and people will undoubtedly they will try to push for it. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen, but um, people will start to think, and that's when they start thinking, that's when they come up with the ideas. Right now, people aren't thinking. There are people thinking, but not enough. And but in that type of culture, I think that people will start to create these solutions, and they'll present them to the government, and there's going to be a different it's going to be a different vibe than I think it is now. And I think people find that hard to believe that something like this could happen, but you have to understand the type of culture that, like I said in my previous video, where the history that people are taught is not going to be the history that we are taught, because the history that they're taught is going to be what happens in between the time that you died and the time that they were born, which is going to be hundreds of years into the future. And that history is going to be saying that, the internet technology brought us together. We all spoke the same language. We have the means to communicate with each other. We we no longer felt the need to be patriotic, or take pride in a heritage or of ancient times, and we looked to the future and we said that we're human. We're all the same species. We all speak the same language. We have the same types of likes and dislikes, and a similar culture. So we're going to stick to it. And there's some people are going to inevitably not like it, but um, I think that you know the government might turn into a slight dictatorship by necessity, because the people will be so desperate, much like they are today, where people are willing to give up their constitutional rights, like with the Patriot Act and NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, because they felt the need, because they were frightened by the situation that they were in, and they felt threatened. And I think people will do that in the future. That's what's going to happen. But I don't think it's going to be permanent. I think maybe it might happen. It might go on for generations, might be a few years, but I don't know. But this is my theory, and I think that we'll have to learn through trial and error. They will start to establish uh, a, a model for how the economy, and decide who gets what resources. And I still don't think that it's going to be a resource based economy, even once they get rid of the money. It's going to be more like a technocracy or a techocracy. And uh, the lifestyle that they live is probably going to be much better than ours, but they might not necessarily have the same type of freedoms. Yeah, but people are going to take what they can get, because they know how bad it was before. And as time goes by, they'll tweak the system where it becomes so more and more efficient, and become an actual resource based economy like in Star Trek. But I'm going to go ahead and end this video. And I'm sorry I went on too long. made this about half an hour. I should have done it in 15 minutes, but I can't do that. So, but I enjoy watching your video, and if you feel free to leave a comment or rate the video.